anybody that comes to endorse Chris McDaniel, they come from Alaska, they come from Pennsylvania, some TV show host today is on the coast. The people that endorse Cochran are Phil Bryant, Tate Reeves, Philip Gunn, Greg Harper, Alan Nunley, Stephen Palazzo, Roger Wicker, Trent Lott, Brett Favre. What do they all have in common? They're all Mississippians, and what they care about is Mississippi.
Good old-fashioned Southern politics. It is to some just another primary runoff in another Southern state. But the Republican runoff in Mississippi, as the New York Times put it, defies conventional wisdom. And it will, say many, reverberate around the country. Welcome to Midpoint, a man who knows how the Southern voter thinks and why they think that way. Political consultant Amile Wilson joins us today on Midpoint. Amile, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you, sir. Glad to be on with you guys.
All right, tell us a little bit, first of all, and set the stage here, because the runoff election is going on today. But when I say that it is good old Southern politics, this has been a dirty race from day one, hasn't it?
This has, and it didn't initially start out that way. The first few weeks weren't that dirty. What made it dirty, and I think this is emblematic of where campaign finance reform is and third-party expenditures are taking us, since you can't coordinate, you can't talk about a candidate you're supporting, all of these third parties on both sides are limited. Both sides are limited only to contrasting ads and things like that. So it creates a negative environment.
Now, well, let's talk about that. When we talk about ads that have contrasting ads, isn't the voter supposed to be intelligent enough to make a decision here and see through basically what is the hyperbole in all of these contrasting ads?
Sure, but the problem
you would
is
hope.
when you have millions of dollars pouring in from both sides, it can really drown out any hard news reporting, and all the voter is hearing is the hyperbole from both sides.
Let's talk a little bit about this. Started talking a little bit into how dirty it has been. I mean, we talked about how it has started, how a lot of the ads have been there, But in your opinion and what you have seen from this runoff election, what's it been like watching these two candidates go at each other, and what are the subtle digs that are being taken here? Some would say not so subtle digs between the candidates.
And it's like two giants just bashing each other over the head repeatedly, and that's the image I come up with is the old Flintstones cartoon where they watched the fight, and it was literally just two guys with clubs beating each other over the head, and that's what it's felt like here. This has been an incredibly expensive race. You've had a lot of negativity from outside parties, and it's been divisive amongst the party. You have, of course, all of the statewide elected officials have been endorsing Thad Cochran, but a lot of the Senate leadership, Senate conservative coalition, specifically the coalition that McDaniel helped create when he was serving in the state Senate, those guys who are, locally elected have been rallying around Chris McDaniel. So you have a very divided party, as you could see by the vote totals. I mean, 49% for one and 49.5% for the other in the initial primary. I don't think this has ever happened in a statewide primary in Mississippi, something this close that's gone into this sort of a runoff.
But are people energized in Mississippi on this? Because as I look at the numbers, turnout at a lot of these runoffs has fallen. In 37 of the 40 Senate runoffs since 1980, there's just not a lot of people who come out for it. So why then should this be, or why should we expect that we're going to see anything different than we have seen in 37 out of 40 other states?
Because there's actually a real contrast between these two candidates, and there's a sort of billing of this as a last stand, both for the Tea Party and for the quote-unquote establishment, that this is a make-or-break race in the eyes of both. people energized. Not to mention the money that's coming in. I'll be honest, Mississippi hasn't seen this kind of national attention and this kind of primary in as long as I've been around. So there's the newness, there's the excitement that for the first time in a long time, there's a real campaign going on.
Would you agree that certainly there were a lot who talked about this, and you just mentioned the same words, talking about this as a last stand for the Tea Party, but certainly looking at what happened since Eric Cantor was ousted in Virginia, there are people who are saying, quite frankly, people are misreading the tea leaves on the Tea Party. There are those saying that, well, don't worry about it. The Tea Party is actually in a downside. But wait a minute, there are a lot of people who feel that that is just not the case. And with McDaniel winning here, it will prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that it should be right back where they want it to be.
Yeah, I mean, this is people talk about the demise of the Tea Party, but you see, they won a House seat. They won Eric Cantor's House seat, and now if they win a Senate seat in Mississippi, that'll be a big step nationally. You look, they already have Ted Cruz, Rand Paul, Mike Lee, and you add a fourth senator up there. That's a sizable amount of people that are sitting in D.C. voting and speaking nationally as representatives of the Tea Party. To say the Tea Party is dead is to ignore the mass popularity of Ted Cruz and Rand Paul to this day. I mean, it's not dead, and winning elections isn't the only thing that a faction like that is good for.
When you look at no, go ahead, please finish your thought.
I say they're good for changing the direction internally of the party. And you saw this with the Democrats all throughout the 90s, that there were small factions which would pop up and push the Democrats, in one direction or another, in favor of welfare reform in the early 90s, in favor of more liberal environmental policy in the late 90s. The Tea Party, whether or not they win this election, is still vocal. They're still going to have seats on county executive committees, on state executive committees all over the country, and they're going to be having a voice pushing the Republican Party in the direction they want for policy issues.
In your opinion, looking at this race, there has been a tremendous amount made that Thad Cochran is counting on Democrats. He is courting the Democrats to come over and vote for him. There is some news coming out of Mississippi today, started this morning, a groundswell where a lot of Democratic leaders are saying, don't vote for him, don't get involved. Of course, we have to then look at who voted in the early primaries, who votes now. But simply just counting on the Democrats, how much of a mistake is he making?
That's always been electoral strategy in Mississippi. I look at plenty of Democrat sheriffs, Democrat House of Representatives members who specifically will go around in Republican areas and say, I'm not asking for the whole House to vote for me. I'm just asking for one person in the House, in this household, as a Republican, vote in the Democratic primary and vote for me.
But is Cochran the kind of guy, and does Cochran have the kind of policies that would make him attractive to Democratic voters?
Cochran has the style that makes him attractive to Democrat voters in Mississippi. People forget Mississippi is not that Republican. The Republican Party has only controlled the state legislature for 3 years. Most of our elected officials still self-identify as conservative Democrats. That shift has been changing, and you've had lots of people switching parties, but there is still a sizable amount of conservative Democrats. Even in the African American community, there is a sizable amount of pro-life, Black pastors who might be registered Democrats, might tend to support the Democratic Party, but they're still pro-life, still going to cross over and support Cochran. That dynamic is there in Mississippi. It's always been there, and I would venture to say that not a single Republican or Democrat has gotten elected in the past 20 years without crossover support. Yeah. And it shows in just the T-shirts and bumper stickers, Democrats for Phil Bryant, Republicans for Obama, etc.
Okay, I'm all out of time here, but let me ask you this, Amile. 10 seconds left. Who do you think will win this runoff?
I think it's going to be very close, and I'm actually not going to put my name out for either one. I think it's that close.
Okay, I understand completely. In a situation like this, you got to hedge your bets. Amile Wilson, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Best wishes.
It will certainly be interesting to see what happens and what the Tea Party will say, win or lose, coming out of this race. Stay with us. There's a whole lot more to come, because here on Midpoint, we question everything.